Random thoughts. In this video, I'm going to talk about a legal, you can call it a legal framework that is practiced in most or many of the Islamic countries that was actually practiced widely in most of African republics before the arrival of the colonial powers. And this is what is called the Diya in the Islamic law. Of course, there is news today that one Steve Munyakho has been released, and this is a Kenyan who, I think it was in 2011, he got into a fight with a colleague at work, and he ended up killing the colleague. It wasn't murder, it wasn't planned. Seems like they were maybe it was a hidden moment, and then there was a scuffle or something like that, and then the other guy ended up dead. So Steve Munyakho, of course, was arrested, was taken through a judicial process, and he was found guilty of manslaughter. And so according to the law in, I think it's Saudi Arabia, if I'm not wrong, if you are found guilty of manslaughter, you have two options. You are going to face the death penalty, or you are going to pay up and pay the family of the deceased some amount. And Steve Munyakho has been in jail for over a decade, and thanks to his mother, there has been a huge campaign to have him released, and money has been raised, and seems like he has been released. Now, this law that allows for somebody who is accused or has been found guilty of killing another person paying, many people might think that this is new, like maybe or something that only happens in Islamic, we can say, legal frameworks. But this used to happen in most African republics, actually. Almost all African republics used to have this, and I guess some monarchies used to have this as a basis of, or a way to mete out punishment when somebody kills someone. Now, I remember I was reading a document that was describing the Agikuyu Republic, and this is a document that was written, I'm trying to remember the title. It's a document that was written, I think, in very early 20th century, could be 1902, 19 up to 1910, around there. It's a very detailed document that describes how everything was handled in the Agikuyu Republic. And that includes, of course, punishment for breaking the law or for crime. And that document describes exactly the situation where somebody is accused of having killed somebody else, and then the case is brought before the Kiama, and the Kiama listens to the case, of course, and of course they conclude that, yeah, this person is guilty of taking the life of somebody else. And the punishment was primarily for the person who has been found guilty to pay some animals or the family of the person they killed. And it was the same case among the Luo. Among the Luo, if you kill somebody, then you are supposed to pay cattle to the family of the person who you ended their life. It was the same case among the Maasai in the Maasai Republic. If you kill someone, then you had to pay up. You had to pay up whatever number of animals that the Council of Elders decided that you needed to pay. And this was the case in almost every other republic you can think of, that was in Kenya and outside Kenya, in Africa, that is, that Dia was that law, that if you took someone's life, you paid. Of course, most African republics did not have prisons where you would be jailed, but they had mechanism of punishing people who did crime. And if you killed, this was part of the punishment, that you would be forced, you or your family would be forced to pay a certain amount of or number of animals. Now, the other part of the punishment was, of course, banishment, which meant you'll be sent away, sometimes for a certain period of time, sometimes for good, depending on how the case is looked at by the elders. Sometimes, I think mostly if it was really planned murder, then they will be like, you need to go away from society. And remember, during this time, not being part of the people you belong to was basically a death sentence. Like, you needed to be with the people you belong to, that's the republic or the community where you were born. because those are the only people who would accept you, who knew you. So you leaving that and going outside, often you would face very rough existence outside there. So banishment was actually a very, very severe punishment that you will get. So yeah, so there was that part of you'll pay up, especially for manslaughter. It was like not planned really. Maybe you got into a fight with someone and they ended up dead. Then paying up used to be the way to go. Like you will have to pay. Mostly it was cattle or goats and sheep in most of these African republics. Of course, we've gotten so much used to the British law or how the British handled criminal law, or the British criminal law, that we think, or we've come to think, that maybe that's the only way that issues are resolved. But yeah, there are other systems, and Dia is one of those. And I found it so interesting that this law exists in the Islamic world, and then reading a few documents, you come to realize that it actually existed in many African republics, and even those that were not Muslim at all. This was like, it was like the basic law actually when it came to manslaughter and to some extent murder. Yeah, so those are my random thoughts.